The person who hurt you most did not look like a threat. They smiled, they listened, they made you feel understood, and by the time you realized what they were, you were already inside, already trusting, already exposed. You have been here before. Someone who seemed kind, someone who seemed safe, someone who said all the right things at all the right moments. And then one day everything shifted. The mask slipped, and you saw what had been underneath the whole time. Most men are taught to watch for aggression, for hostility, for obvious threats. But the most dangerous people do not advertise. They do not need to, because their weapon is not intimidation, it is trust. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He wrote that a prince must be a great pretender and dissembler, that the best deception is not the lie you tell, it is the character you perform. He watched the rulers of Italy destroy each other, and he noticed that the ones who survived longest were rarely the strongest or the most aggressive. They were the ones who seemed least threatening, until they struck. The people who damaged you most were not the ones you feared, they were the ones you let in. The ones whose kindness felt so real that questioning it felt like paranoia. There are 7 reasons why the most dangerous people are almost always the kindest looking. 7 things happening behind the warmth that most men never see until the damage is already done. First, and this one explains why you keep getting surprised. You have met someone who made you feel instantly comfortable. Not over time, instantly. Within minutes you were telling them things you do not tell most people, and you did not even notice the door opening. You left that conversation feeling like you had known them for years, but you had known them for an hour. And in that hour they learned more about you than your closest friends know. This is not natural chemistry, this is a technique, and you have walked into it more than once. Rapport is not something that happens. It is something that can be manufactured. Eye contact held a beat longer than normal. Mirroring your body language. Asking questions that make you feel seen. Laughing at exactly the right moments. Nodding when you speak. Using your name more than necessary. It feels like connection. But connection that moves that fast is almost never organic. Real trust takes time to build. Manufactured trust takes 10 minutes and the right script. Ted Bundy killed at least 30 women. He confessed to 30. Investigators believed the number was higher, possibly over 100. He was also described by almost everyone who met him as charming, handsome, articulate, easy to talk to. Women trusted him. Men liked him. He was the kind of person you would introduce to your family. One of his surviving victims later said she felt safer with him than she had felt with anyone in months. He asked about her day. He listened. He made her feel like she was the only person in the room. He offered to help carry her groceries. She got into his car willingly. Bundy later said in interviews that creating trust was the easiest part. Most people are desperate to be understood. Give them that feeling and they will follow you anywhere. Bundy understood something most people never want to admit. The feeling of safety has nothing to do with actual safety. It is a feeling, and feelings can be engineered. When someone makes you feel comfortable too quickly, that is not a green light. That is a yellow one. Real trust is slow. Manufactured trust is fast. The speed is the tell. If it feels like instant connection, slow down. Ask yourself what you have actually observed, not what you have felt, what you have seen. That is the first layer, the speed of rapport. The second one goes deeper into why your brain lets it happen. 2, and this is the part you will not like. You have met someone kind. and your brain immediately filed them as safe. Not because of evidence, because of appearance, because of a smile, because of the way they made you feel in the first 5 minutes. This is called the halo effect. When someone has one positive trait, your brain assumes they have all of them. Attractive, kind, warm, generous, honest, competent. One of those gets confirmed, and the rest get assumed. You have done this. You have met someone attractive and assumed they were also intelligent. You have met someone successful and assumed they were also ethical. You have met someone warm and assumed they were also safe. This is not stupidity. This is wiring. Your brain is built to take shortcuts. It cannot evaluate every piece of information, so it bundles, it assumes, it fills gaps. And this shortcut has been exploited by predators for thousands of years. Elizabeth Holmes raised nearly $1 billion before Theranos collapsed. She was young, well-spoken, and idealistic. She wore black turtlenecks like Steve Jobs. She spoke slowly, deliberately, with a deep voice. She talked about changing the world, about making healthcare accessible, about saving lives. And investor after investor handed her money without ever confirming the technology worked, without ever demanding proof, without ever looking behind the presentation. When asked later why they trusted her, most of them gave the same answer. She seemed so genuine. She seemed like she really believed in what she was doing. And she did seem that way. That was the point. Holmes was eventually convicted of fraud, sentenced to over 11 years in prison. But for years, the halo protected her. People saw youth and passion and assumed competence and honesty. She used kindness and vision as cover. And it worked until it did not. The person smiling at you might be exactly what they appear, or they might know exactly what their appearance buys them. The only way to know is to stop assuming and start observing behavior over time. Not words, behavior. Not how they make you feel, what they actually do. Me. That is what the halo effect costs you. Assumptions disguised as intuition. The third one is about what happens when kindness is a transaction. This one operates differently. 3. Someone does something kind for you. Not a small thing. Something real. Something that costs them time or money or effort. And now you feel like you owe them. Not because they asked for anything. Because you feel the debt without being asked. This is not generosity. This is leverage being installed. And by the time you realize it, the debt is already there. The hook is already set. Reciprocity is one of the oldest influence mechanisms in human behavior. When someone gives you something, your brain creates pressure to return the favor. It feels like fairness. It feels like obligation. But it can be engineered. Charles Ponzi, the man behind the original Ponzi scheme, did not start by asking for money. He started by giving it. In the early stages, he paid his investors exactly what he promised. 45% returns in 90 days. Impossible returns. But he paid. He paid on time. Every time. Without being asked. Without delay. And those early investors told everyone they knew. They brought their families, their friends, their churches. Ponzi understood that the fastest way to build trust is to give before you take. Make someone feel like they have won. Let them experience the benefit. Let them feel grateful. Then when you ask for more, they are already in. They cannot say no without feeling ungrateful. By the time the scheme collapsed, Ponzi had taken over $20 million. In 1920, that was an unimaginable fortune. And it all started with kindness. Generosity that was never generosity, just the setup. If someone is kind to you without reason, do not immediately assume the best. Ask what the favor might cost later. Not because everyone is a predator, but because the ones who know that kindness is the cheapest currency to manufacture and the most expensive to refuse. So that is the transactional layer. Kindness as a down payment. The fourth one is about how real danger stays invisible. 4. This is where most men make the critical error. You have looked for red flags in the obvious places. The aggressive tone, the controlling behavior, the visible anger, the person who raises their voice, the person who makes you uncomfortable immediately, and you have felt smart for avoiding them. Meanwhile, you have missed the person smiling next to you who was doing more damage than anyone else in the room. The most dangerous people do not display warning signs, they hide them. Because displaying danger is a disadvantage. It puts people on guard, and people on guard are harder to manipulate. John Wayne Gacy was a local businessman in Chicago, a community volunteer, a Democratic Party precinct captain, a children's entertainer. He dressed as Pogo the Clown for charity events and parades. He hosted neighborhood parties at his house. His neighbors described him as friendly, outgoing, helpful, the kind of guy who would help you move furniture. He also killed at least 33 young men and buried them under his house, in the crawl space, beneath the concrete. When Gacy was finally arrested, the people who knew him were not just surprised, they were disoriented, because nothing they had observed matched what he was capable of. They had barbecued at his house. Their children had sat on his lap in the clown costume. That was not an accident. Gacy knew that visibility creates vulnerability. The aggressive man is watched. The angry man is avoided. The kind man is trusted. And trust creates access. You are not looking for red flags in the right places. The most dangerous people have already learned to remove every flag you have been trained to watch for. What you should be watching is consistency over time. Do their actions match their words across months and years? Does their private behavior match their public performance? That is the only flag that matters. That is the invisibility layer. Danger that looks like safety. The fifth one is about the specific type of listening that should make you pause. 5. And this one hides in something that feels like intimacy. You have met someone who made you feel truly heard. Not half listened to while they waited for their turn. Truly heard. They asked deep questions. They remembered details you mentioned once. Things you forgot you said. They made you feel like you could tell them anything. And maybe you did. You told them about your fears, about your failures, about your ambitions, about the thing that keeps you up at night. And it felt good. It felt like relief. It felt like finally being understood. Not everyone who listens is gathering, but some are, and you cannot tell the difference in the moment, only in what happens later. This is strategic listening, not listening to connect, listening to collect. Every detail you share becomes a piece of the map. Your insecurities, your ambitions, your weaknesses, the people you trust, the people you resent. The more you share, the more complete their picture becomes. Robert Hanssen was an FBI agent for over 20 years. He was also a Soviet spy, one of the most damaging in American history. Hanssen was described by colleagues as quiet, thoughtful, attentive. He listened more than he talked. He remembered things. He followed up on conversations. He asked about your kids by name. People trusted him because he seemed genuinely interested in them. Not interested in himself, interested in them. That was the technique. Every piece of information Hanssen gathered from colleagues, from meetings, from casual conversations, fed directly into his intelligence work. He sold secrets to the Soviets and Russians for over 2 decades. Names of American agents, surveillance operations, nuclear secrets. When he was finally caught, the damage was estimated in the billions. And it started with listening, with being the person who paid attention when no one else did, with being the kindest ear in the room. Someone who remembers everything and shares nothing is not necessarily your friend. They might just be building a file. Notice who asks the questions. Notice who never answers them. That asymmetry is the tell. That is the listening layer. Attention that feels like care but works like reconnaissance. The 6th one is about the face people wear in public versus what happens in private. 6. And this is the one most people refuse to see until it is too late. You have seen someone be charming in public, warm with strangers, generous with acquaintances, the person everyone describes as wonderful. And then you have watched them become completely different behind closed doors. Cold, dismissive, cruel, a different person entirely. And you wondered which version was real. The public version is performance. The private version is data, and most people only see the performance. This split is not rare. It is common among the most dangerous people because public kindness is a shield. It makes accusations sound paranoid. It makes victims doubt themselves. It makes everyone say, "But they seem so nice." And that phrase becomes the armor. Jimmy Savile was one of the most famous entertainers in Britain. He hosted Top of the Pops for decades. He raised over £40 million for charity. He visited hospitals. He met with prime ministers and royalty. He was knighted by the Queen. He was described as a national treasure. He was also a serial predator. After his death, over 400 people came forward with accusations. The abuse spanned 5 decades. Hospitals, schools, television studios, children's homes, victims as young as 5 years old. And for 50 years, no one stopped him. Not because no one suspected, because the public image was so powerful that every accusation seemed impossible. He seemed so kind. He did so much good. Who would believe it? The public face was the armor. The private behavior was the truth. And the gap between them was where the damage lived. You cannot judge someone by how they treat strangers. Strangers are easy to impress. Strangers require no effort to fool. Watch how they treat people who cannot help them. Watch how they treat waiters, assistants, anyone with no power. Watch what happens when no one is looking. That is where character actually lives. That is the public-private split, the performance that protects the predator. The last one is about why you keep trusting the wrong people. 7. Last one. And this is the one that ties everything together. You have trusted someone who hurt you, and afterward you asked yourself how you could have missed it, how you could have been so blind, so naive, so foolish. But you were not blind, you were human, and humans are wired to trust faces that signal warmth, to let our guard down when someone seems kind, to assume the best until proven otherwise, to believe what we see. This is not a flaw. This is how cooperation works. Without baseline trust, no society functions, no friendship forms, no partnership holds. Trust is the foundation of everything. But the same wiring that allows trust also creates the vulnerability. The most dangerous people study this wiring. They know that warmth disarms, that generosity creates debt, that listening builds intimacy, that public goodness creates cover. And they use every piece of it, systematically, deliberately, patiently. Bernie Madoff was trusted by thousands of investors for decades. Hedge funds, charities, banks, celebrities. He sat on the board of NASDAQ. He gave to philanthropy. He was soft-spoken, patient, reassuring. He made you feel like you were part of something exclusive, something safe. When people asked how he generated such consistent returns year after year without a single losing quarter, he smiled and said it was a proprietary strategy. And people accepted that. Because questioning him felt rude, because he seemed so trustworthy, because everyone else trusted him. So it must be fine. Madoff stole $65 billion, the largest financial fraud in history. People lost their retirements, their homes, their futures. Some lost their lives. And the entire thing ran on trust, not contracts, not verification, not due diligence. Trust. Trust that he built carefully, deliberately, and strategically. The point is not to stop trusting. The point is to stop trusting appearance. Kindness is not evidence of safety. It is just a presentation. And presentations can be designed. Watch behavior over time. Watch consistency. Watch what happens when stakes are real. When no one is watching. When there is nothing to gain. That is where truth lives. Not in the smile. In the pattern. A man walks into a room. He smiles easily. He asks questions. He makes everyone feel comfortable. And somewhere in the corner, one person watches. Not suspicious. Just careful. Because they have learned the difference between warmth that is offered and warmth that is performed. And they are no longer willing to confuse the two. The people who hurt you most did not look like threats. That was the point. The aggressor you can see is the aggressor you can avoid. The one who looks like safety is the one who gets inside. You are not paranoid for questioning kindness. You are accurate. Because kindness is easy to perform, and performance is cheap. What is expensive is consistency, behavior that matches words over years, presence that remains the same when no one is watching. That is what trust should be built on, not warmth, not first impressions, not charm, pattern. If something in this video shifted how you see the people around you, the subscribe button is there. The next video covers why the man who talks the most is always the weakest in the room, and you will never hear meetings the same way again.